Welcome to Payoff Pitch, Action Network's Major League Baseball betting podcast. I'm Collin Whitchurch. We're back for another division preview. As always, I'm joined by Sean Zerillo to dive in to the most fun division in baseball. The best division in baseball, maybe the only division in baseball, some might say. The American League Central, of course, I'm talking about, where I believe I'll have to double check the odds, but I think the Chicago White Sox are favored to win this division. I think they might be favored to win the World Series. No, I digress. Obviously, for new listeners might not understand, I am a hardcore, very sad Chicago White Sox fan, and we're talking about my division, where we will see if my team can lose fewer than 100 games. But before we jump in, a little bit of housekeeping. We've got a few previews out already. We recorded the East divisions, AL and NL Easts, yesterday. Those are already up on your podcast feeds. We had Anthony DeBundo of The Ringer on to preview the NL East. Lots more content coming up soon for you, so stay glued to your podcast feeds. Also on YouTube, Action Network's YouTube channel. They will be up there as well. We will also have 2026 long shot props, player props episodes coming up soon. Then, once the season begins, Payoff Pitch will have best bets episodes for you every Monday, Tuesday, and Friday morning during the season. Those will be broadcast live on YouTube as well, so you can watch them live or look out for them on your podcast feed. It'll be myself. It'll be Sean most days. Grant Neefer with his dinger bets. Everything you need for the 2026 MLB season. So please, if you're listening to this, go on your podcast feed of choice, give us a 5-star rating and review. We really appreciate all feedback, especially at this time in the calendar. Negative feedback, positive feedback, we don't care. Call us idiots, but give us 5 stars, please. It really helps us. So without further ado, let's jump into the American League Central. We're going through, we'll go via division odds, going through these teams, talk about their win totals, what we like, what we don't like of these teams. And at the end of the episode, we'll give out our favorite bets for the division. So we'll lead off with the Detroit Tigers. I forget this often, despite how obvious it was at the time. Not the defending AL Central champion Detroit Tigers. Famous collapse last September. Ceded the division to the Guardians, but then, of course, got their revenge in the playoffs where they beat them. In the wild card round, ended up losing a just absolute classic series to the Seattle Mariners. They are plus 110 to win the AL Central this year. Win total 85.5. Last year, again, 87 and 75 with a Pythag of 88 and 74. So pretty much right in line last year. Zerillo, you have them at, I believe, in the 86 win range this year. The public range on the Tigers is 83 to 89 wins. So we're right in the middle there of where all these public projections are at. Of course, they had a really quiet offseason. I was, I have a lot of Tigers fans, friends, and I was like, what is this team doing? Go out and spend some freaking money. This is your division for the taking. They were sitting on their hands for the longest time. Their biggest signing was Kenley Jansen. And then, of course, late in the offseason, big signing to get a co-ace behind Tarek Skubal, with Framber Valdez adding to that rotation. They also brought back old friend Justin Verlander for a last hurrah in Detroit. I love that Justin Verlander, as an aside, is continuing his tradition of only playing for teams with orange as a primary color. Drew Anderson they brought over, Austin Slater as well. Not a lot of losses out of this team. Jason Foley, Jose Urquidy, Chase Lee, Chris Paddock, Paul Sewald, and Rafael Montero are out the door. I'm going to lead off here, Sean. I usually let you talk about this team before I give my thoughts, but I'm all in on the Tigers this year, which longtime listeners will be shocked. I'm such a Tigers hater. A lot of the projection systems, and maybe yourself included, have this as a pretty tight division. I don't see it that way. I think the Tigers are head and shoulders above every team in this division. Maybe this is a little bit of a reverse jinx. Maybe I've just been beaten down by the Tigers destroying my White Sox for so many years. But I think this is a very obvious division winner bet at plus 110. And I'll go a step further to this. You can bet them to win the Central at plus 110. I also like their odds to make the playoffs. It's just like minus 144. I feel like that's easy money. And let me throw a couple other things at you. Tigers to get the number 1 seed in the AL, 10 to 1. Mm-hmm. Tigers to finish with 100 plus wins, 10 to 1 as well. Tigers to finish with the best record in baseball, 45 to 1. They're going to beat the shit out of this division. I think the Royals are somewhat up and coming. The Guardians we'll get to in a minute. They're like almost the new Rays or the Brewers where they're confounding the projections every year. The Twins, we'll get to them as well, have some very cellar dwellery bets on the Twins this year. And then my White Sox, who knows, even if they improve by 10 wins, that's still a 90-loss team. So I think the Tigers are head and shoulders better than this division. The other divisions, we talked about the AL East yesterday. People can go listen to that preview. All of those teams are tough. They're going to beat up on each other. The Tigers are going to get to play these AL Central teams, so many times. I think they're going to rack up the wins. So I like some of these long shot dart throws on their ceiling, their absolute ceiling. But, for the more risk averse, division title, make the playoffs, easy money for me on the Tigers. What say you?
So first off, you said the phrase old friend Justin Verlander literally the moment, I'm not even exaggerating, the moment I sent out a tweet with the phrase old friend Anthony DeBundo with our NL East podcast on it. So I don't know what kind of mind meld we have going on
Wow.
the camera here, where we're coming up with exact phrases as one another without speaking about them, just thinking about them. Very, very odd this morning, but we're very much on the same page with the Detroit Tigers as well. So I'm going to take that as a good sign for my Tigers futures and maybe your Tigers futures this year as well too. I got this team at plus 165 to win the division when I gave it out in my team futures preview. So I was way, way, way ahead of market here. I make them a coin flip essentially. We'll get to the Guardians in a minute. The Guardians I'm much higher on than market as well. Not that I'm betting the Guardians. I'm just much higher than the other teams in this division on Cleveland. Again, I make the Tigers minus 102. So plus 110 or better to win the division. Perfectly fine. I'd even take them down to even money. I agree. I really like this team in the AL Central as well. I just think they're substantially better than the other teams, but also adding Kevin McGonigal, probably adding Max Clark at some point. And I think the Framber Valdez signing on top of, they did lose arbitration to Tarek Skubal. So it's not as though they paid up for him and they may end up, just letting him leave. Ultimately, assuming they have a good season, they're not going to trade him. But I also think this is a team who's probably going to be willing to add pieces in season as well. They don't normally add a ton. They added a couple of relievers last year, didn't really add much beyond that, even though it seemed like they were in prime position to make a run at a title last year, especially in a season where Tarek Skubal is healthy and throwing. You really want to just out and out go for it, right? But I do expect them to be a little bit more aggressive at the trade deadline this year. A lot of the stuff that we talked about in the preseason pod in terms of the potential lockout and teams just needing to go for it because who knows if there's even going to be a season next year. But I think the Framber Valdez and the Justin Verlander signings ultimately kind of prove that they are pushing the chips in for this year. So Tigers division down to even money. I don't see that minus 140 on the playoffs. I would bet that if I did. I make them about minus 175 to make the playoffs. That's roughly what I saw out there in the betting market. But I do like your stances in terms of the escalators, the seeds, the buys. I would even go, I don't know if I would go number one seed. I would definitely go first round buy, though, for the Tigers, if you could find that too. One of the top two seeds, I think, is very much within play for them because, as you alluded to, they're going to rack up wins against this division. Now, I do have a few player prop bets here. We discussed the top awards guys who all stayed healthy and won last year. Judge, Ohtani, Skubal, Skeens, all were the favorites, all ended up staying healthy, all won. I'm only betting on one of them to repeat this year, and that's Tarek Skubal to win his third consecutive Cy Young. I made him about plus 300. I think the injury probability differential, the talent gap between him and Garrett Crochet is very narrow. They're right there with one another, but the injury probability gap between the two, even though Skubal's had Tommy John before, a couple of years ago, a few years ago at this point, and Crochet had injuries in the minors. I don't believe he ended up having Tommy John. I could be wrong about that. But ultimately, in terms of how the projections rate their relative health, Skubal is much likelier to stay healthy, much likelier to throw more innings than Crochet, and ultimately does have better projections. Not to mention he's in his final year club control and pitching for what could be like a gajillion-dollar contract if he goes into free agency off of 3 straight Cy Youngs.
Resets the market, essentially.
Oh, my goodness. 3 straight Cy Youngs. I don't even know how you evaluate that from a free agency perspective. But also, you kind of have to assume the guy has peaked at that point, right? Like, he's not going to win 4 straight or 5 straight. But yeah, Skubal Cy Young, 4-1, down to about plus 350, I like. Framber Valdez wins leader at 30-1. I make that 22-1. I bet him basically every year for this award. He just pitches so deep into games, and especially the Tigers, they're just going to let him go and try to save that bullpen as much as possible. That bullpen fatiguing from 2 years ago, I think, is actually what hurt them last year. They used the bullpen so aggressively 2 years ago in the second half in order to get into the playoffs, and then they were just throwing chaos baseball every single game at teams in the playoffs. I kind of had a thesis last year that the Brewers, the Tigers might wear down, and it ultimately did end up coming true for the Tigers, who had just used that bullpen so much in the year prior. So I think that was a contributing factor to their second half collapse. But Valdez, as I said, for that reason, I think will pitch deep into games as he typically does. I also like him to get 16 plus wins. That was my only win milestone bet that showed value, the only one among all the pitchers in baseball. I make that plus 476. I took 6-1. I'm good with that, down to about 5-1. Valdez, K escalators, 200 plus is plus 550. And I believe I make that about plus 375. So I combine that with the win milestone bet. And then finally, their newly signed closer, Kenley Jansen, sitting on 476 career saves, 24 away from 500, favored to close for a 90-win team. I have Kenley Jansen to get 30 plus saves at plus 310. I made that closer to plus 200. And then his 40 plus save escalator is 10-1. I'm certainly a little bit more aggressive in projecting that. There's other guys on the team who could vulture him. Finnegan, maybe not Herder, who got absolutely destroyed by the Finnegan Republic lineup the other day. Yes. But there's other options there, but he will be the primary option. And frankly, if they're trying to keep the arbitration figures on the other guys low, or the valuation on the other guys low, you would just go with the old guy and give him all the saves because he's probably not going to be on your team next year. But I think Jansen gets to 24 saves. The point is, because he's at 476, I think they get him to 500. The question is if he gets 6 more or maybe 16 more from there. But I think the odds on him to do so on a 90 plus win team, maybe even a 100 win team, are looking pretty good. So the Valdez win stuff, the wins leader stuff, Jansen save stuff, I think that all correlates with how much Collin and I like the Tigers this year.
Yeah, Jansen, 2 saves away from Lee Smith for third on the all-time saves list, and then he'll just have sole possession of that for a while. He's more than 100 shy of.
He gets 3 saves guaranteed.
Yeah,
but I'm hoping he gets 24 and beyond that 30.
Yeah, if he saves 25 games, he'll still be 100 away from second place Trevor Hoffman. So he'll just sit in third place. But I know that it seems like that means a lot to him. You know, he's probably a future Hall of Famer at this point. He's 36 saves clear of Craig Kimbrell, who's the other semi-active pitcher in fourth place in the saves list. I did want to talk. You brought up the prospects. You know, I'm a prospects guy.
Yeah.
What's perfect about these prospects is that they, you know, a lot of teams have top prospects come up, and it's like, well, where are they going to play? That's not an issue with this Tigers teams with McGonigal and Baez McGonigal and Clark, because they fit perfect holes in this roster that the Tigers are likely to have. Every single plate appearance that the Tigers give to Javi Baez over Kevin McGonigal this year is a crime. Like Javi Baez,
I think McGonigal is going to make the opening day roster. They keep hitting him leadoff in spring training. I think
he's projected to make the opening day roster right now on roster resources. Okay. Like with Griffin and the Pirates, it's going to come down to, you know, the thing that my one concern with the Tigers, other than the obvious injury concern you have with any contender, is the Illich cheapness. Mm-hmm. Will they try to get a call-up extension done with McGonigal, and if they don't, are they going to hold him down for Super 2 or just even just that extra year of control? What people, I think, often forget with these new player performance incentives as part of the current CBA that encourage teams to call guys up, what I was going to say is they have to be – you don't get a PPI if he's on the opening day roster if you sign him to an extension first. So like with Griffin, there's already a lot of speculation that the Pirates are going to have a deal worked out with him, and they put him on the opening day roster, and then you announce the extension like a week later. You just delay the extension because then you still get the PPI. I'm wondering if the Tigers are going to do the same thing with McGonigal. Okay. And if they can't, I just wonder if they hold him down. If they hold him down for 2 weeks, that's not going to affect his rookie of the year case, and it's not going to affect the Tigers' outlook all that much. If they hold him down for Super 2 until like June or whatever, that is just absolutely unfathomable.
I think you have to be up within like 15 days though, or something, right, to also qualify for it. Isn't there like a rule on the other end as well?
Something like that. Yeah. I don't know all the minutia. I just know that contract extension thing is an interesting little wrinkle.
That's fascinating. I didn't know that existed.
Yeah.
So
And then Max Clark. Max Clark's not going to be up on opening day, but Max Clark should be up June, if I had to guess. And they've got spots there in the outfield. Like you can easily replace Parker Meadows or Wenzel Perez. Wenzel Perez is probably better served in kind of a super utility role anyway.
Max is going to take off one chain every month until he's light enough to play in the big leagues.
The absolute most swaggeriest prospect you will find. And
is it swagger though if you're dropping fly balls while dressed like, while you're dressed like that? Like it's swagger if you're hitting bombs and making catches. It's not swagger if you're messing up in the field. So
you're very right about that. But the potential ascent of these guys also helps counteract expected regression from some of last year's overachievers. Like they're not putting Zach McKinstry in a starting role to start the season, and that's good. McKinstry overperformed last year. We saw Baez overperform in the first half last year.
Hey, that's all-star silver slugger Zach McKinstry.
I know. It'll be interesting to see if Dylan Dingler can continue what he showed last year, particularly defensively. Catcher defense is so volatile. But the Valdez signing just gives them such a higher floor too, where they can even be okay even if Skubal gets injured for a short period of time. It's a lot nicer to have Jack Flaherty and Casey Mize as your numbers like 3, 4, 5 starters than it is having them as like your numbers 2 and 3 starters. It just helps raise their floor. We love Kerry Bonds in the middle of that lineup. The one player prop I wanted to throw out here, another long shot dart throw, is Riley Green to win AL MVP. 80-1. He's a guy that I've been high on for a long time, just kind of waiting for him to put it all together. His award ceiling was hindered a little bit by the fact that he could no longer play center field, but he can be a solid left fielder out there, and that dude has 40-plus homer potential. He's a guy who's going to hit a lot of homers. If he can keep that average up, it makes up for the amount of strikeouts in his game. And how well he can hit lefties will also be a big question. But so there's obviously warts in his profile, which is there's a reason he's 80-1 again. But if the Tigers have the ceiling that they do, if they achieve all of these ladders that I'm talking about, if they win 100 games, they're probably going to have an MVP candidate. It might be Skubal. Skubal was their MVP candidate last year, right? But if there's a hitter who's going to carry them and going to be like that star who gets consideration on a potential 100-win team, it'll be Riley Green. So 80-1, I feel like, is worth a dart throw.
Yeah, I put him in my MVP article. I basically said to watch him and watch his whiff rate in April. Yeah. He's for his career a 29% strikeout rate, but just the 12th percentile in whiff rate. He swings and misses a lot. If he gets the in zone contact rate up a little bit, yeah, he's going to hit 40, maybe even 50 home runs at peak. So Riley Green, absolutely talented, 92nd percentile in bat speed. The defense is actually dragged down his WAR, so maybe moving to left field could help lift that up a little bit. But yeah, I completely agree on the power. I didn't think when he came up, this would be a guy I'd be talking about as a potential 50 home run hitter in the future. But the power is there. He just needs to hit the ball more frequently.
Tigers by the way, plus 350 for them to just get a bye. So I think that's pretty solid.
I like Tigers and Mariners to get buys.
There we go. And all the AL East teams just duking it out for those other spots.
They're going to beat each other up, and the winner is going to finish at 90. And I think the Tigers and Mariners get ahead of that. Yeah.
Yep. All right, let's move on to the second team in this division. It is not the Cleveland Guardians, just based on preseason odds again, which is the order we're going in. It is the Kansas City Royals, plus 225 to win the American League Central. I wrote the player comments for the Royals in this year's Baseball Prospectus Annual, so go ahead and please, shameless plug, check that out if you haven't already. One of my favorite books, preseason books every year. Plus 225 for the AL Central. Win total 81.5. They won 82 games last year with a Pythag of 83. Public range relatively wide on this team, 79 to 85 wins. They made a lot of moves on the fringe during the offseason. Matt Strahm, they brought in as a reliever from the Phillies. Lane Thomas, Isaac Collins in a kind of interesting trade with the Brewers. Nick Mears, Starling Marte, they just signed recently, I think, to a spring training deal. Cameron Misner, Alex Lang, John Means, Eli Morgan, Luke Maley. They lost Mike Yastrzemski, Michael Lorenzen, Angel Zerpa, MJ Melendez, Randall Grichuk, and a bunch of other relievers. And everyone's clubhouse favorite can't hit, can't play guy Adam Frazier is out the door as well in Kansas City. This is my one straight win total bet I have in this division, Sean. I'm not sure if you're with me on this. I like the Royals. I think they're, again, the clear-cut second best team in this division. They're a team kind of on the ascent. They have the ceiling with guys like Bobby Witt, and they've got pitching depth. If they have a healthy Cole Reagans, which they didn't last year, it bumps some of these other guys down in the order, the Wakas, the Bubiches, Lugos, Noah Cameron, last year's breakout candidate, who I think people are expecting some regression from this year, and also some ascending prospects. We're going to see Carter Jensen this year, and I really like Carter Jensen. I'm not sure if I can get there on his Rookie of the Year odds. And we also saw Vinny Pasquantino last year in the second half, finally started to tap into some of his power. I think he hit like 70% of his homers in the last 3 months of the season last year. So they've got some middle of the order boppers. Bobby Witt Jr. is obviously an MVP candidate. Michael Garcia, another breakout last year. And Jensen and a second year of uber prospect Jack Caglione. There's a high ceiling on this team. Again, that kind of goes against what I was just saying against the Tigers, but I think this is a team that could contend for a wild card spot, and at the very least is the second best team in this division. That's I think is an above 500 team as a floor. So I like over 81.5 on the Royals. Where are you at on them?
I'm at 80.3, which and the market's at 80.7. I'm actually I'm a tenth of a win higher on the Guardians. We'll get to the Guardians in a second, but I'm also highest than market on the Guardians. And I think I put in my team futures preview that the Royals, and I did this, I believe 2 years ago when they made the playoffs. The Royals are a team I want to watch in April just to make sure Reagans looks healthy. Who's their other top arm? I'm blanking right now. Yes. I just want to make sure the arms get to the regular season healthy. Reagans is healthy. Bubic is healthy. Noah Cameron's healthy, because you did say they have pitching depth. I kind of disagree with that. They have a nice 1 through 5 rotation.
Yeah, you're right about that.
I'm sorry?
I said, yeah, you're right about that. That's a good call.
I worry about like once 1 or 2 injuries happen. This was the same concern, the exact same concern I shared last year. Once 1 or 2 injuries happen, if Witt gets hurt, if Reagans gets hurt, I worry the house of cards kind of falls down. Because I don't see the 40-man roster depth. I like the 25-man roster, and I absolutely think the 25-man roster can make the wild card. They're just going to need a little bit of injury luck in order to get there. Now, to that point, I bet Cole Reagans to strike out 240-plus hitters this year, which only happens if he's fully healthy for the entire year. That bet was about 10-1. It certainly fit within my milestone projections as the highest milestone that I was willing to bet a dude for. And I think relative to his leader odds, it was just a much bigger edge. He only projects for about 200, but he had a 38% strikeout rate when healthy last year, which is absolutely insane. And it was 46% after he returned from his rotator cuff strain in the second half. So Cole Reagans was great last year. The issue is just staying on the field, like it is for Hunter Green as well, who ended up just getting hurt in spring yesterday. And that's largely my point, right? Is it's a little difficult. I need to give out the bets in February, but it's a little difficult to lay money on pitchers, even at 10-1 in February, when I know they have a whole spring to get through, and one injury kind of kills that bet. So, I don't want to bet, or I don't want to give out too many bets that are DOA on opening day because the pitcher's on the IL. Now, the other bets I like for this team are the saves leader from last year, Carlos Estevez, to lead the league in saves again at 20-1. If the Royals are making a wild card, they're probably winning a lot of tight games, but it means they're getting to probably 85 wins. And with that, Estevez can get to the 40-plus save mark again. Now, I believe his velocity is down a little bit in spring training, so that's obviously a concern. I think Steven Erceg is probably the first guy up behind him, but he is going to close for the DR, or at least he should, in the World Baseball Classic, and we'll see how the velo looks there as opposed to how it looked in spring, or if it ends up regaining a little bit after how he looked in early spring. But Estevez saves leader at 20-1, and his 40-plus saves mark as well is plus 330 in the event that he's in the mix, but does not ultimately get to the finish line as the number one saves leader. So going with some higher end, or I guess longer shot milestone props or pitching achievement props between Riggins and Estevez. Not a ton of takes on the Royals in general, but as I said, I do want to watch them in April, and they may end up being a wild card or a to make the playoffs in season ad in April.
Estevez, excuse me, is one of those confounding relievers who like goes against everything you see in modern relievers. He's not like a lights out, fire breathing dragon, and
Nope.
it makes him feel like a house of cards. Trust me, as someone who had a lot of stock in him in Dynasty Baseball last year, it was like heart wrenching to watch because he's absolutely the old school closer who will load the bases in the ninth inning and then get out of it with a save.
Cardiac closer, right?
Yeah, he struck out 54 batters in 66 innings last year. He walked 3 batters per 9. I think Erceg is actually the more talented reliever in that bullpen, but he's the old school, the quote unquote proven closer, right?
I'm clearly not betting on skills. You know, when you're playing fantasy baseball, you want to bet on skills with relievers. You guys can tell I'm not betting on skills. I'm betting on opportunity with closers. So yeah, it's a different approach completely than I would normally take in terms of betting on the best guy. I'm very much betting on what I expect to be the opportunity.
Yeah, I guess from a fantasy perspective, as just a little aside, I think Matt Strahm might be the guy who might be kind of under the radar, could take over that job if Estevez falters and maybe they like Erceg more just in a setup role. That was a nice under the radar get. It was a reliever for reliever trade. I believe Jonathan Bolin went to the Phillies, Strahm went to the Royals, and he's just been I think he projects as the Royals' best reliever this year. Strahm does. There was one other thing I was going to say on this team. Oh yeah. I looked at their, I said I'm on their win total over. I looked at their make the playoffs odds plus 140. Couldn't quite get there. I feel a lot safer just betting on them to get to 82 wins. They get to 85, 86 wins. They're probably a playoff team, but I would rather have that, pay 40 less cents or whatever, or get 40 less cents in return for them to just finish above 500 than to make the playoffs. But I do think this team does have playoff upside. I think both of us expect the Central to only have one playoff team.
Mm-hmm.
If they get 2 playoff teams, I think it's more likely to be the Royals than the Guardians this year.
Despite what my projections say, and I have the Guardians ever so slightly ahead of the Royals, despite what my projections say, I completely agree with that analysis. And as we discussed yesterday in the AL East pod, 4 AL East teams are favored to make the playoffs. It's never happened in this era or in this 3-team wildcard era that we've had 4 teams make it together from one division, because it's very difficult for those teams to not beat up on one another and not leave somebody below or not leave 2 teams below 83 wins. So yeah, if the Royals get to 84, 85, they're going to be in the mix just because the AL East teams are going to push at least 2 of the other ones down.
Speaking of those Cleveland Guardians, let's move on to the 3rd team in this division, the defending AL Central champions with their just absolutely insane run last fall. They are plus 425 to win the Central this year. Win total 79.5. Again, 88 and 74 last year with a Pythag win total of 80. Their public range is all, for the most part, I haven't checked the updated numbers, but I believe the public range is all projecting them to go under that win total, with the exception maybe of you, Sean. 75 to 78 is what I have down for their public range. Mm-hmm. They, like the Guardians do every offseason, did basically nothing. Their big additions were Collin Holderman, Sean Armstrong, and the recent minor league spring training invite Rhys Hoskins. One of the stranger NRIs I saw for a team that has Kyle Manzardo, CJ Kafis, David Fry, bring in Rhys Hoskins. First base was not exactly the position I would have thought they would have targeted there, even though Hoskins is a relatively big name. They didn't really lose anyone either. Lane Thomas, Sam Henkes, Jakob Junis, John Means, Tristan McKenzie out the door, and Will Brennan. This is the team in the division that I have the fewest takes on. They are, as I alluded to off the top, they're kind of becoming in that same vein as the Brewers and the Rays we see, where the projections are never going to love them, but they somehow pull it out of their ass. Stephen Vogt, I think, is won Manager of the Year back-to-back years now.
So is Pat Murphy.
Yes. So I have one prop on this team. It's not a very exciting one, so I'll let you go first here, Sean, on the Guardians, who you mentioned you have just ever so slightly ahead of the Royals in this division. What are your takes on Cleveland this year?
So this team, I don't know if you mentioned it, but not only are the projections in the high 70s, and I'm highest in market at just over 80. I'm at 80.7. I think you said the range is like between 76 and 78 out there. This team also overachieved by 8 wins per Pythag and 11 wins per base runs last year. They expected wins were 80 and 77 by those two metrics. They also lost Emmanuel Clase halfway through the year.
Right.
Doesn't seem like he's going to be coming back anytime soon. The fact that they ended up surging past the Tigers without Clase was like made the whole thing even more unlikely and shocking. Now they're probably going to add Travis Bazzana. We saw hit a nuke for Team Australia last night. Best part of the WBC is getting to see dudes like Bazzana put their entire country on their back. It's awesome. But Bazzana should be up in relative short order this year. We also saw Chase DeLauder come up in the postseason last year, and he's absolutely been raking in spring. I like Chase DeLauder as the AL Rookie of the Year. I believe I bet him at 25-1. I'm good with that, down to about 20-1. I think he'll very much be in the mix. His issue has just been injuries. This dude gets banged up every single year, and he's also playing center field, I believe, for the first time in his career, or one of the first times in his career. I think when he started in center field in the ALDS last year, there was the AL wildcard round. I can't recall, but I'm pretty sure when he started in center field, it was the first time he had ever started in center field at the professional level, or one of the only times.
And I think he dropped a ball in the first inning too.
Yes, he did. And then he, I think he ended up settling in and making a couple of nice catches. But
the
larger point is that center field and shortstop are center field and catcher are the likeliest positions for you to get injured. Catcher, because you're taking so many foul balls off the chest and off the mask, etc. And center field, because it's the position where you're likeliest to dive for a catch or to collide into a teammate and end up hurting yourself. Shortstop, second base, a little bit risky too because of the second base collisions. But center field, catcher, the positions that injure guys most frequently. So putting an injury-prone outfielder out in center field by itself concerns me, but the talent is undoubtable. He has above-average power, and you can argue a good to elite hit tool. He's going to hit opposite field home runs. He's a really, really good player. So I'm very high on Chase DeLauder, provided he stays healthy. And then Bazzana as well, I think he only projects for like an 88 WRC plus Bazzana. I think he could be close to a league average hitter right away. He looks like an absolute stud. So I think those two, are going to kind of drive how far the Guardians go this season. I didn't say it for the Royals, but I kind of feel the same way about the Royals with Jack Kaggs and Carter Jensen. Like I think the quality of seasons that the 4 young guys I just mentioned, Kaggs, Jensen, DeLauder, and Bazzana, are going to kind of drive how these teams finish relative to one another in the Central. I think that's a fair take to have because those are the guys with the highest upside that we haven't seen fully break out yet. And depending on which ones are able to put it together or which ones don't, I think it sort of raises the ceiling of these respective teams. Now, the Guardians should continue to have an elite bullpen, as they always do. Cade Smith just kind of took over for Clase and ran with it last year. They also ended up adding a few guys to that bullpen too. And anytime the Guardians are adding dudes to their bullpen, I trust that they've seen something in terms of their pitching development that they think they can modify or make better. And for that reason, and the reasons Collin alluded to, this is the AL Central version of the Milwaukee Brewers. I can never forecast this team to be way under projections like a lot of the public projections are. And if you trust those public projections, this is a team you should be banging on the desk to bet to miss the playoffs, because the average public projection has them at about minus 900 to miss the playoffs, and you can bet them at minus 220. I'm much more in line with the market. In fact, I make them plus 175 to make the playoffs, minus 175 to miss. And as a result, I would be betting them to make, if anything. But I'm going to end up passing on that. I like the DeLauder bet. The only other bet that really stands out here that should be available, because I bet a Jose Ramirez stolen base leader prop at an off-market price at 25-1. That was just like this is a price that's way off. I have to play it. I do, though, definitely like Jose Ramirez under 28.5 home runs. It's his age 33 season. He projects for 28, and his batted ball metrics are starting to go in the wrong direction, which is expected considering the age. So I still think he's crafty. I still think he's going to find his way to getting 25 home runs, maybe even 40 plus steals again. But the power metrics for Jose at an expected age are just starting to move in the wrong direction a little bit. It's the under 28.5 for Jose Ramirez home runs, but definitely prefer Chase the Lauder Rookie of the Year down to about 20-1.
Yeah, I'm glad you brought up the prospects. DeLauder almost certainly going to be on the opening day roster. Bazana, as you mentioned, we saw him hit a home run for Australia overnight, I guess late last night. I don't know if he's going to be on the opening day roster. I don't think he's expected to be, but he is. It's not as extreme as the McGonagall bias thing, but with the Guardians giving playing time to Brian Rocchio and Gabriel Arias, like that is a clear area of upgrade. So I think we see Bazana pretty soon. I said I had one prop on there, but I wanted to throw another one out at you because there's another guy on this team that I'm particularly high on, and it's Gavin Williams at the top of that rotation. I feel like he's an ascending pitcher. His walk issues give a lot of pause, but I was looking at him. I was trying to find a way to bet Gavin Williams in some capacity. Strikeout leader, stuff like that was a little bit too extreme, but there is a prop out there in the market of him to get over 156 and a half strikeouts. I like that quite a bit. Again, with any pitcher, it's health pending. He struck out 173 last year in 167 innings. This guy has workhorse like ability. We saw him throw, I think, a complete game shutout against the Mets last year. He threw 110 plus pitches in a start. Like, Stephen Vogt's not afraid to rely on this guy. I know it's kind of a Koei situation there between him and Tanner Bybee. Tanner Bybee probably has a higher floor, but Gavin Williams has a much higher ceiling, particularly when it pertains to missing bats. So I'm curious where you're at on Gavin Williams. I couldn't get there on any of the more extreme upside strikeouts, Cy Young, anything like that, but I saw just 156 and a half for his strikeouts. Seems like a pretty solid bet to the over there.
I agree. Steamer has him at 181. Oopsie has him at 172. The Bad Axe has him at 164. And last year in the second half, he was much better than he was in the first half. I'm not sure if it was a pitch mix change or if he just figured out the command piece a little bit, but the strikeout rate, they go up. The walk rate went down. First half strikeout minus walk rate, 9%. Second half, 18.4%. So we doubled it, and the expected FIP went down from 455 to 343. So yeah, Gavin Williams seemed like he had a second half breakout. Again, I didn't look into see what caused it, whether he just figured out the command or he ended up changing his pitch mix around a little bit. But agree, I think he's the Guardians' best starting pitcher. I expect him to overtake Bybee as their clear number one, assuming they make the postseason. He would start game one. I don't think that'll be the case, but by the end of the year, I think it's very clear that he will be the better pitcher than Bybee, who I'm starting to move in the other direction a little bit on, just given the home run issue. But yeah, I like that prop. I as I've alluded to though, and I could just kind of reiterate it here, because nobody projects the milestone markets. The over-under markets are much easier to project. The leader markets are much easier to project. I found massive edges on the milestone markets, like, so betting him 150 plus would be a much bigger edge, very likely, than whatever his over-under would be at another book if it's listed. So yeah, definitely dip into the milestone markets, because I found massive edges there relative to over-unders or stat leaders.
Yeah, wow, that's weird. Yeah, DraftKings is way off some of these other books because 170 plus strikeouts for Gavin Williams, they have it minus 280, which, considering the over under 156 and a half, that is an example where the over under has better value.
Yeah, that could even be a mistake where they meant to put a plus sign. I can't think if that even would be possible. But as I've said, I've alluded to, there's been other props where I know for sure a book meant to put up a minus 160 and they ended up putting a plus sign in front of the number just because everybody else in that category had a plus sign in front of the number, and I think it was just a pure mistake. So
yeah,
that's 200 plus, a good way to get your account banned is slamming money on an obvious mistake line.
Yeah, his 200 plus strikeouts is plus 350, which I think he has that kind of upside, but I couldn't really get there at that price. So one other Guardians prop I wanted to throw at you, especially after we just talked about the Royals and your Estevez saves leader prop, is Cade Smith's out there for saves leader at 22-1, and I bet that as well. That's probably my favorite Guardians prop, period. You mentioned, he took over for Clase last year after the suspension. And I think even before the suspension, Cade Smith was the better reliever. He just was pitching in setup role. He wasn't the quote unquote established closer again. And now he's number one with a bullet closer in Cleveland. He strikes out nearly 12 batters per nine. He's projected as one of the better relievers in baseball this year. He's probably going to be a top 5 reliever, and I think he has saves leader upside. So 22-1 seems too good to pass up there.
Yeah, if you agree with my projection and you think the Guardians are closer to a playoff team than a non-playoff team, if you think they'll be in the mix and they're going to win in the low 80s for games, I made Cade Smith about 21-1 for saves leader. I think I saw as high as 22-1. There were other guys in that range I just showed slightly more value on, like Danny Palencia, for example, who projects to pitch for a 90-win team, whereas Cade Smith is projected to pitch for an 80-win team, but I don't disagree with it. He was within range of being a value play. There were just some other guys that were preferred.
With Major League Baseball right around the corner, now is the perfect time to get yourself an Action Pro account. Get real-time pick alerts from experts like Sean Zerillo, also access to Sean Kerner's strikeout prop projections, and much, much more. Right now, new subscribers can get $20 off a year of Action Pro at actionnetwork.com/pro. Use promo code POD20. Again, that's promo code POD20 for $20 off an entire year. You'll be covered for March Madness, which is coming up, the rest of the NBA season, of course, the upcoming entire MLB season, plus next season's college football and NFL seasons. So don't wait. Visit actionnetwork.com/pro right now. Use promo code POD20 to get $20 off a year of Action Pro. All right, let's get down to the potential cellar dwellers of the division. We will start with the Minnesota Twins. Plus 900 to win the AL Central. Win total sitting at 72.5. Last year they won 70 games. Again, kind of bottomed out at the trade deadline. Got rid of everything that wasn't nailed down. Kind of surprisingly didn't trade Joe Ryan or Pablo Lopez. They got rid of Carlos Correa's contract and traded basically their entire bullpen. They won 70 games, had a Pythag win total of 71. The public range is pretty high on this team, and I don't understand it. 77 to 80. I know you're low on them. They did a lot. They did what teams that are ready to tank do in their offseason. They didn't sign anyone except 1-year deals for veterans that they can flip at the deadline. Victor Caratini, he might have not gotten a 1-year deal. I don't remember. Josh Bell, Taylor Rogers, Liam Hendricks, Anthony Banda, Orlando Arcia, Gio Urshela, Andrew Chafin. They traded away Edward Julian and Pearson Ole. Not a lot of action. Of course, since spring training began, they lost Pablo Lopez for the season to arm surgery. They still have Joe Ryan at the top of the rotation, although he's dealing with an injury that made him have to skip the WBC. They still have some decent arms in that rotation. Bailey Ober, kind of a high floor guy. I'm really high. We talked a lot in our daily best episode last year about Zebby Matthews. He's one of the pitchers I'm higher on. Taj Bradley hasn't really worked out. Didn't work out that well in Tampa. Moved to Minnesota. Simeon Woods Richardson. And they've got some decent bats, but I just think this is one of those teams. We talk about it every year. That context matters relative to preseason projections. And sure, on paper right now, the Twins have a 75-win team, maybe. Just throw it out there. They've got ownership situation that's in flux, front office situation. They got rid of their GM after, like, late in the offseason. There's a lot of confusion about this team and about where they're at financially and what this ownership wants to spend. I think this is a team that come July is going to once again tear it down, and they're going to tear it down even harder. My one bet on the Twins is for them to finish with the worst record in baseball at 30-1. I think they have that kind of floor. Sure. I think they're much more likely to go in that direction than surprise people and like contend for a playoff spot. I couldn't necessarily get there on the win total or anything else like that, so I'm just going to go with the most extreme outcome and say Twins to finish with the worst record at 30-1. That's my one Twins bet. Where are you at on Minnesota?
Yeah, you're doing what we often discuss, which is leveraging your opinion or your thesis in the probably optimal way, which is the floor for this team is super duper low. But right now, you're getting great odds on that because the majority of projection systems say that they're closer to a 500 team than a 100 loss team, which I disagree with. I put them right at around 70 wins, so 70 and 92. Most other projections, as you alluded to, have them at about 78 wins. And even looking at the roster on paper, I'm not sure that I see that because I'm handicapping the roster on paper. I'm not factoring in anything that's not there. I'm not factoring in Byron Buxton being traded, which is a little bit of a difficult situation. He said he was explicitly asked at the All-Star game last year, would you waive your no trade clause? And he said no. And he was very adamant about that no. So if this continues to get worse and this does trend towards a 100 loss team, maybe that changes his attitude, but he has the decision whether they're able to trade him or not. Beyond him, I like Luke Keyshaw. I like Royce Lewis when he's on the field. Yeah. Royce Lewis can't seem to stay on the field. And clearly they waited a little bit too long to trade Pablo Lopez and Joe Ryan as well. Maybe Pablo was already dealing with the shoulder injury and he wouldn't have passed medicals anyway, but Joe Ryan certainly seems like they waited a little bit too long to end up dealing. Traded, as you said, 10 players at the deadline last year, including Carlos Correa, back to the Astros. That might have been addition by subtraction because I think his contract is going to end up being absolutely disastrous. I think he's already trending towards the Chris Bryant trajectory a little bit for Carlos Correa. But ultimately, you know, as I make this team closer to 70 wins, I do like the under 73.5. I bet under 74.5. I'd take it down to 73.5. I might even go to 73, regardless of what that public projection says. There will be subtractions from this roster by August 1st. And as a result, I think this team ends up finishing maybe 5th in this division. We'll get to your White Sox in a second. But yeah, a hard arrow pointing down for the Twins, who are also incapable of spending. They just brought in minority owners as an investment group, I think, just to pay for salaries and overhead this year because they were thinking about selling the team and weren't able to get the offer that they ultimately wanted. But they also didn't invest in this roster at all either and ended up kind of hiring a manager who had no previous success in Derek Shelton either to man the team, I think, because a lot of their first choice candidates were unwilling to be a part of what is likely to be a very down 2026 season. So I'm down on the Twins. I like their win total under, but I wouldn't really go past 73. And I think we're probably already starting to get to the cutoff line.
Yeah. And another thing about this roster is even if they stay together, it is one of the most injury prone rosters out there. It's tough to bake that into projections too much, but Buxton had his best and healthiest season ever last year. Can they get that? And he played 120. He still missed 40 games. You know, can they get another year of that? And outside of even Buxton, Royce Lewis, as you mentioned, hasn't been able to stay on the field. Luke Keyshaw missed a lot of time with injury last year. Brooks Lee has injury issues and hasn't proven he can hit yet at the major league level.
Larnach's always hurt.
Yeah, Larnach's always hurt. And Matt Wallner I actually love as a power source. Like, that dude can hit bombs for days. Can he stay in the lineup? So a lot of question marks.
Like, if everything goes perfectly for this team, do they win 80 games? I don't know if I see it. If everything goes well, that 78 still feels a little bit high.
Yeah. And this team also might have the worst bullpen in baseball. They're going to be in contention. I mean, probably the Nationals or Rockies will be worse, but Taylor Rogers is your closer. You're throwing out guys in high leverage like Justin Topa, Cody Funderburk, Cole Sands, Anthony Banda. The Sheriff, Andrew Chafin, my favorite thing about him is he's been traded at the deadline, I think, like 7 times in his career, and it's going to be 8. If it was 7, it's gonna be 8 because he has left arm will travel. The Sheriff down there in that bullpen.
His Fangraphs page says 2 teams for 5 of the past 6 years. So yeah. Wild.
He is Mr. Deadline acquisition for just a team that needs a low leverage lefty added to the bullpen. So we are in line on the Twins. Not a lot going on there. Just win total under, and again,
got to get to the main event. This is uninteresting.
We are saving the best for last. We will get to the team projected to finish last in the AL Central,
but first in our hearts,
the 2005 World Series champion Chicago White Sox. For those watching on YouTube, I'm wearing my White Sox, my '93 AL West champion hat. They are 35-1 to win the AL Central, which I don't know, seems a little low. Their win total is sitting at 66.5. Last year they went 60 and 102 with a Pythag of 71 wins. They were one of the biggest underachievers last year. Will Venable should have won Manager of the Year, I'm telling you. Anyway, public range on this team right now is between 64 and 70. They had a very active offseason, a shockingly active offseason. The biggest news was them bringing in Japanese slugger Munetaka Murakami, who's going to be their everyday first baseman. They signed Sir Anthony Dominguez, who's going to be their closer. They brought in Anthony Kay back over from Japan, former Mets top prospect. They bought a prospect from Boston by taking on the contract of Jordan Hicks, who's going to go back to the bullpen for them. Austin Hayes, Luis Angel Acuna they got from the Mets, Sean Newcomb, Jared Kelenic is trying to make the team in the spring. And they brought back Eric Fetty, who had his best season of his career in Chicago a couple of years ago. Big losses, of course, was Luis Robert Jr., who they traded to your Mets, Sean, in the deal that got them Luis Angel Acuna. They lost Martin Perez, Tyler Alexander, Michael A. Taylor retired. Mike Tauchman also went to the Mets. What is it with the Mets? They love players from
a lot of Mets interplay here, yeah.
100-loss team. I remember very vividly last year, Sean, coming on this podcast, and the win total was expecting a 15-win improvement from this team, and you said this team is worse on paper than their 41-win team, and I didn't disagree with you, but I said they are actually acting like a rebuilding team now, and they can churn through the roster, and so that was why I was more bullish on them. I will say, I joke about being a White Sox homer. I'm very level-headed about this team, and I'm usually pretty spot on with my analysis with how close that I follow them. And that was exactly what happened. It was like, can this team really improve by 15 wins? And it's like, yeah, variance, manager competence, and then just roster churn. And they didn't improve by 15 wins. They improved by 20 wins. They went from 41 to 61 wins.
And it could have been 30.
Yeah. Chris Getz joked during their Fan Fest this offseason, is like, okay, you improved by 20 wins last season. What's next? And he said, how about another 20? And the funny thing about that is, okay, you improved by 20 wins again. Now you're a 500 team. You're still not even a playoff team if you improve by 20 wins 2 years in a row. But I do think that this team is headed in the right direction. I don't know if necessarily that means anything noteworthy to anyone other than White Sox fans this season. But they have the joke among White Sox fans is that the Rick Hahn rebuilds was all about star power and high-end talent. You get the Eloy Jimenez's and the Yohan Moncadas. And then, so he was great at getting spots 1 through 8 on the roster, and then absolutely terrible at filling spots 9 through 26 on the roster. Chris Getz is great at filling spots 9 through 26 on the roster, but they lack the top end star power. Like this team has accumulated depth like it's never had before. The question is if Colson Montgomery, if Munetaka Murakami can become stars. Chase Mydroth is a decent starting option. Kyle Teal, a lot of upside there. Edgar Caro, again, Luis Angel Acuna, it seems like they're going to give him the everyday center field job. That's going to be interesting. And then they churn through a lot of these young guys. They're going to give shots to guys like Everson Pereira. And the rotation is just filled with, we joked about the Orioles building their entire rotation out of number 3 starters in the AL East preview. And this is a rotation built with number 5 starters, plus last year's breakout, Shane Smith.
We like Shane Smith, yeah.
Yeah. This team has had arguably the worst bullpen in baseball the last 2 years. I think they led the league in blown saves each of the last 2 years. Sir Anthony Dominguez should help with that a little bit. Grant Taylor has elite closer upside. They're going to use him kind of in an Andrew Miller type role this year, though. That's a very long preamble because this is my team. I don't have a good feel on, any of the win totals or division bets on this team. I lean over on 66.5. I think this team could get to 68 to 71 wins, maybe improve by another 10 games. The Twins' descent would help with that, obviously. Sure. I think if there's a bet out there, which there probably is, and I should have looked beforehand, of exactly finishing in 4th place, that could be a bet on the White Sox this year. My only actual locked-in bet on the White Sox right now is Munetaka Murakami over 25.5 home runs.
Yes.
Every projection system has him going over that. There's a lot of questions about whether his skills are going to translate to the major league level. It's one of those situations where when he signed, everyone said, well, if he signed there for that price, that must mean everyone else thinks he sucks. And that might be true. He has those in-zone contact issues that are very, very extreme. What his profile actually looks like to me, Sean, is Kyle Stowers. And you see what can happen with Kyle Stowers when everything goes right. But that profile also has enough holes in it that it could break down very quickly. It's just a 2-year deal. But no matter what he breaks, maybe he's a replacement level first baseman, bad defensively. All he does is hit dingers. And if that's the case, he's still going to hit dingers because he has that type of power. He has top end power. We saw it in the World Baseball Classic last year. We've seen it in Japan for a couple of years. 25.5 seems way too low for a guy who's going to play first base every single day for this team. And even if he hits 210, I think he gets, closer to 30 home runs. So that's my one bet on the White Sox. That's my very long preamble on my team. Where are you on them?
I'm a little bit lower than market on the White Sox, but not low enough that I'm interested in betting the under, especially considering, as you alluded to, if the Twins are as bad as we think they might be, it's just going to pull the White Sox up very likely. I'm at 64.3 wins, market at 67.5. The public projections are much higher than I am. Some of them having the White Sox going over. So there's no bet on the win total for me. The Bet X is at 70.6 wins on the White Sox. So that would recommend an over because that's a 4-1.
Oh, Derek Hardy.
Yeah, Derek likes the over on the White Sox. In theory, I don't know if he actually likes it or just his number would lean that direction. I don't want to speak for him, but certainly a lean at minimum on the White Sox over for Derek. I'm in complete agreement with you on Munetaka Murakami. I have him over 26.5 home runs at -110. That is a 9% edge relative to my projection at 29.7. He hit 56 in the MPB in 2022. I also like Murakami 30 plus home runs as well. I make that +109 and I got as high as +140. So it's another 6% edge out there. Again, the over-unders and the milestone props showing much bigger edges than the leader props. The one under that I took on this team was Colson Montgomery. Sorry. But yes, Colson Montgomery under 24.5 home runs. Projects for 22.4. He did hit 21 in 71 games, but the in-zone contact stuff, the strikeout rate, I think pitchers are going to find holes in his swing this year. He's also a guy who's had to adjust his swing as well. So I think you have the potential that he just kind of loses his mechanics too. At some point when he's trying to adjust, as pitchers are adjusting to him, he tries to adjust back and then loses the swing. So projections love the Murakami over. They also equally love the Colson Montgomery under, despite the rate of home runs he hit in just 70 games last year. But just wanted to reiterate your points on Murakami and why I think the 25 plus floor seems really nice. Every projection system out there has him between 24 and 31, but only one has him below 28, and that Zips at 24. And even Oopsie has him hitting, as Collin said, about 210 for the season. They have him hitting 206. The Bat X actually has Murakami hitting 206 for the season, but they still have him getting 31 home runs in about 457 ABs, about 550 plate appearances. So yeah, full playing time expected for Murakami, like 130 games. Maybe he gets platooned out a little bit. Maybe he doesn't, and maybe he plays closer to 160. And in a full season, this guy should hit closer to 40 home runs than 30. So regardless of what the batting average is, even if it's 200, he's going to put up a Rob Deere-like season and just be striking out or walking or homering. And over the course of that season, 30 home runs should be enough to clear.
The one thing I'll say about Montgomery, I don't disagree with your analysis there, but he has such an extreme profile. I implore you to watch side-by-side video of Colson Montgomery's swing with Cody Bellinger's swing. It is like unparalleled. And we've seen that out of Bellinger, right? Bellinger, we've seen the extremes, the good extremes and the bad extremes. And he could have offensively a very Bellinger-like career. I don't know if he has winning an MVP at 23 like upside like Bellinger did, but like what we've seen out of Bellinger the last like 5 years, the good and the bad, that is very much that type of like kind of uppercut, starting really high and still uppercutting it type swing out of Montgomery is what we saw last year. So very intrigued by him. The power is very real. So like if if you were to lose that bet, it could be in a very extreme way. But, if he hits 25 home runs or if he hits 45 home runs, you lose the same amount of money, right? So, but I understand the projection there because, like Murakami, he has a big hole in his swing.
Mm-hmm.
He's dealt with mechanical issues last year. People forget last year he didn't make the team out of spring because he had a terrible spring, and then he had a terrible first month in AAA to the point where they pulled him out of AAA, sent him down to Arizona to have individual workout and like play in the AZL for a little bit. And then he came up and finished 5th in Rookie of the Year voting. So it's
I was listening to prospect evaluators too in the spring who were just like, I'm out. Like I don't trust the swing at all. And he ended up fixing it. The bat speed is near 100th percentile. Like the bat speed is super elite, but the chase rate, the squared up rate are like the other direction. So very, as you said, a very extreme profile. The skills are there. It's just the approach is not what I want to see.
Yeah. It's just nice. I'll end on this. It's just nice to have players worth getting excited about.
Absolutely.
For the first time in a while here. We barely even touched on the rotation. That could be pretty ugly. Although I am, I know we dabbled in the Sean Burke Rookie of the Year market last year, and that went about as badly as a bet could go.
I'm a big Hagen Smith guy. You got a few arms on the way.
Yeah. Both Hagen Smith and Noah Schultz struggled last year. I think both were expected to make the majors last year and struggled to the point where they didn't. Hagen Smith actually tore up the Arizona Fall League this year, so we should see both in the majors this year. My one gem in that rotation, other than Shane Smith, who people know because he made the All-Star team, is Davis Martin. Davis Martin's a really solid floor guy in that rotation,
and maybe Anthony Kay will be something.
Maybe, yeah. I think there's a reason he was lights out in the MPB, but he does not miss bats.
Mm-hmm.
But all right, so that's our White Sox. Before we get out of here, Sean, we like to go through, give out our favorite bets for this division. From a win total perspective, what's your favorite AL Central bet?
Win total perspective, we'll go Twins under 74.5 down to about 73.
And I like the Royals over 81.5. I think that's my only win total bet in this division, so that would be my favorite. Player props, stat leaders, awards. What would you say your favorite one is for the AL Central?
There's a number here that I like. I'm going to go with the Fromber ones. Fromber wins leader 30-1. Fromber 16 plus wins 6-1. Fromber 200 plus Ks plus 550. I think they just let him and Skubal throw as many innings as they want to this year.
Yeah, I'm kind of between my two favorites this year. Murakami over 25.5 home runs is probably my favorite. And I'll also throw out Cade Smith saves leader at 22-1. Big fan of that one as well. It's more of a
I love the Murakami stuff too. It's among my bigger edges.
And then for division best bet, I know we're both on the Tigers this year. Tigers are my favorite division best bet. Any disagreements there? Anything else you want to throw out?
Not at all. Take it to even money. I think they're even better than the projections say they are.
All right. That'll do it for this episode of Payoff Pitch. Make sure to download the free award-winning Action Network app to follow all our action experts like Sean Zerillo, and so you can track your picks on your own. Use promo code POD20 for $20 off a year of Action Pro. Just go to actionnetwork.com/pro to get started. Also, please don't forget to rate, review, and subscribe to catch all our division previews here on Payoff Pitch, plus so much more. For Sean Zerillo, I'm Collin Whitchurch. Thanks for tuning in to Payoff Pitch, Action Network's Major League Baseball betting podcast. We'll see you next time.